I will live my life. As those generations depend on me, and I will teach and encourage all of mine to do the same. Silverback! Silverback! Whoa!
And I say this in my 26 years, this is the first program that I've seen an immediate impact, especially with boys.
Welcome to another edition of the monthly Silverback Society show. I'm your moderator, Norman Robinson. On this broadcast, we have with us Dr. Charles Corprew III. Dr. Corprew spent an entire Silverback Society program cycle evaluating the efficacy and impact of the Silverback Society work in several schools and produced a rich qualitative data report titled Make Me Better. Welcome, Dr. Charles Corprew III.
Thank you, Norman.
Appreciate
to be here.
It's great to have you here. Tell us a bit about yourself and how you got involved with the Silverback Society.
Norman, I'm the president of WY Revolution Consulting and fortunate to be a good friend of Lloyd Dennis. It's quite interesting.
Our executive director of the Silverbacks.
Exactly, wonderful man and mentor of mine as well. So very interesting, Lloyd and I met at a Kellogg convening several years ago. We hadn't been introduced to each other, but we'd known each other through passing. And so we began this conversation about how we could help each other. We began talking about his organization, the Silverback Society, and how he could basically elevate what the mentors were doing. And so we talked about an evaluation and how we could illuminate the goodness of the program. And so that's how we got started.
So why was such an evaluation of mentees important?
I think when you talk about mentoring is actually one of the most critical components of a person's development. And I think if we don't talk about that, if we don't highlight that and the importance of that, I think we're doing a disservice. But I think the second aspect in that is that how often do we hear the voices of the mentees? Mm-hmm. And I think the report allows us to see that, to hear the positive impact of mentoring on a population that often their stories are told incorrectly. And so it was a wonderful opportunity to hear what the mentors were doing and how their impact on the boys' development was highlighted not only in that school year, but hopefully as they carried themselves throughout high school and beyond.
I'm curious, you said sometimes their stories are told incorrectly.
Right.
How does that work?
Well, you think about what's going on in our society right now. You think about what we're seeing, particularly with the police shootings, violence in our communities, mm-hmm. How black men are actually characterized in the media. And so I think that story is told incorrectly because we don't often see the highlights of the goodness mm-hmm. of our young men, whether they be old, young. We don't get to see that. We don't get the highlights of mentoring, of positive academic success, of being the president and what that's like on a daily basis. Those stories are told incorrectly because all we hear about is thug. We hear about the violence in our communities. We hear about mothers and sons without fathers or husbands. Those are those stories that are told incorrectly.
So we're talking about changing not only the image, but the way the public perceives young black men.
Exactly.
And it's up to us to change that perception, is what you're saying.
Exactly. We have to highlight the positive images, the positive successes that are happening in our communities, particularly with men of color, particularly with African American males. We don't do that enough.
Now, what kind of questions did you ask in this evaluation, and what was your methodology?
Well, what we wanted to do, the overarching question was, how did the mentors impact the young men? And so we looked at several different questions. So how did the mentors impact their academic expectations and their academic prowess in the classroom? We also looked at how the mentoring program impacted how they saw themselves as future leaders, their future expectations. We also asked how they saw themselves as men after completing the program, and lastly, how they saw themselves as African American men in our current society. We did this by doing a qualitative and quantitative methodology, so sending out several surveys to them, as well as completing focus groups with boys that were handpicked from certain groups and all of them from other groups. So we could just hear a variety of answers to get a complete story.
So what did you learn from this study?
One, that our boys are hungry. They're very, very hungry for men in their lives that are going to show them something different. And I want to reiterate that. They are hungry. And they welcome the mentors into their lives. It's very interesting if you happen to get to read the study, is that they highlighted how the mentors showed them how to be men, how to take care of women, how to be the leader of their families, which highlights the Silverback motto, their methodology. It also talked about some of the recommendations, or some of I want to say statistics or answers, highlighted how they wanted to play football or they wanted to rap, and how the mentors provided a different avenue to them. They saw themselves as different people. They had different avenues. And they said if they weren't a part of the program, they might not have been able to see that, because they don't happen to see men like the Silverback mentors in their communities as often as they need.
So they were somewhat hamstrung by society's perception of who they are, and before interacting with the Silverbacks, they bought into society's perception.
I don't want to say bought into. I think that particularly in adolescence, we're looking for models, and they just didn't have a variety of models to look for. So I don't want to say hamstring. I don't want to put that in a negative light.
Okay.
But I think that when we have a variety of models to look at, particularly during adolescence, when we're having that vast developmental period, we want to see a variety of things that we can choose from.
Were you surprised at any point in your effort to have a conversation? I'm thinking it was a frank conversation with these young men.
We did have some very, very frank conversations, very open conversations. As one young man said it, I don't have a father. My father's in jail. But what I get, from these men, I want more. Very frank, for him to open up to me, coming in, he doesn't know who I am, but the mentors allowed that vulnerability, which is hard for us as African American men to have that vulnerability, particularly with people that we don't know. But for that child to say that my father's in jail, but I had an opportunity to see something different, was eye-opening for me.
So you're teaching not only the kids about something that they weren't aware of, you're teaching us men about something that we weren't even aware of.
Exactly. I think that we have to think about the mentoring piece from both sides of the coin. That the mentors, and we also did a small report with what do the mentors get out of it? They got so much, and we have to think about that parallel between the mentors and mentees and what each side gets from that. There's a level of love and joy that builds when you have the ability to interact with two generations.
You talked about the conversation you had with one young man. I want to read you a quote from another young man you had a conversation with, and he says, quote, It makes us feel proud to be black young men after we've been through the Silverback Society. Like training, it made us feel good, and it made us feel like, man, we got to go through this. But once you went through that, it just feels good to be a black man. What does a response like that mean to you?
I think particularly if I take that as a whole, from all of the evidence that we received, is that it means that I can look at being a black man as something positive, as something very, very positive. That going through this, seeing these mentors who are lawyers, who are doctors, who are entrepreneurs, who are inventors, I see something positive. I can see these positive images where it's not just a rapper, it's not just a football player. There are these variety of images of black men that say, this is what I can be. I have this positive centrality of being black. And it didn't seem like from that response that up until the Silverback Society, they had that positive image or positive outlook or positive feeling about being a young black man in our culture.
So images are important. They stick with us. They tell us what we can do, and they tell us what kind of restrictions are on us.
Right.
And so when you look at this, how do you change the conversation with these young men to put them in the frame of mind where they're thinking on multiple levels, not just being a sports guy or a rapper guy or some kind of celebrity, but an integral part of the community?
One of the things I think, our young men, and particularly as they're during that adolescent developmental period are trying to figure out how they can make the most money. You know,
The old dollar.
the old dollar, exactly. And so as I've mentioned before, when you give people different modes to do that and show them different levels of success that are outside of their purview, I think that changes the conversation. But going back to the psychology of it as well, is having open conversations with young men about where they are, where they can go, who they can be, how they can lead. I think that we don't often show our young men that they can lead. And that's a key component of the Silverback Society. You can lead. You should be a leader. You are going to lead your family and your community because that's what we need, particularly in these trying times in our culture and our society. We need young men and their voices to be out there at the forefront, saying, you know what, here I am. I'm a part of this process. Don't shoot me. Allow me to be involved in this culture, to thrive. That's where I want to be. That's what we want them to
So
say.
this organization, the Silverback Society, I guess is breaking those stereotypes.
Yes.
Destroying those stigmas, and we're having a conversation with young men about our lives and how that relates to them.
Right.
And we're removing this negative point of view where we look down on them as somehow being unmotivated and unworthy.
Right. It is. I think about this. I've been doing some work for the mayor's office around equity and with the health department. And we talked to two sets of population, young men, 15 to 24, and then older men. The older men had been incarcerated are now out. But the young men in New Orleans who had not been as well educated were telling the same stories as the older men who were getting out of jail. We want to make sure that those stories are not the same. We've got to go in and mediate that early. So our boys are not telling, so when they get older, they're not telling the same stories that they were when they were 15, 16, 17 years old, that they can talk about success.
Dr. Charles, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Norman.
And you have given us something that gives us the inspiration and the motivation to go forward.
Thank you.
All right. Dr. Charles Corprew III. We pause now for a short break, and when we return, we discuss how you or male you know can volunteer with the Silverback Society to bring this successful mentoring program to more young men.
I will live my life as though generations depend on me. And I will teach and encourage all of mine to do the same. Silverback! Silverback! Move!
So the Silverback Society
It's going to change the entire dynamic.
of young people, but also
It's just going to change the entire dynamics of the environment that we live in and the world.
as it relates to what is happening in education.
I think the mentoring program is a success and that more states should incorporate the Silverback Society of performance.
It's a space where folks who have been disconnected from the system are able to plug back in and like seed into the lives of young people.
But the knowledge and experience was given to me by my elders, and I need to pass that on.
And then they become attached to the school that they work at, the faculty. They become a face that's recognized, that's loved.
I'm very proud to be part of the organization.
As a younger black man, it is stuff like this that shows me which path I need to go down, and I'm just proud to be a part of the Silverback Society.
Oh, those boys are much too much. Those boys are much too much. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We're going to beat them and bust them.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life.
Let's get a little bit rowdy. R-O-W-D-Y.
Take time to be a dad today. Call or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
Thank you for calling your GED Pep Talk Center. All right, now, are you ready for your GED Pep Talk?
Being nervous is okay. It just shows that you're serious about getting your diploma.
A lot of things are scary. Heck, I'm scared of clowns.
No quiero ir. No lo puedo hacer.
DMC, life in your pep talk style.
Just keeping it real, Debs, just keeping it real.
Whatever motivation you need, we've got a pep talk for you. Get your GED pep talk and find free classes at yourged.org.
All in together now, we can make it better now. Come on, can we do it?
Yeah, you know that we can.
We rope it up,
cause we know how to jump.
we roll it out,
cause we know how to skate.
we'll cut it down,
We know what to eat.
we'll swap it out.
We eat healthy stuff.
Can we do it?
Yeah, you know that we can.
Can we do it?
Just moving a little and eating better every day can help make you and your child healthier. Search We Can to find doable tips and activities that you can use every day.
My life is full of statistics. Thing is, I could have dropped out of school and become one myself, but I didn't because I had people that believed in me. Here's another statistic. 7,000 students drop out every school day. That's one every 26 seconds. It's time that students know that we believe in them.
Inspire a student and share your message of support at boostup.org.
And I say this in my 26 years, this is the first program that I've seen an immediate impact, especially with boys.
Welcome back to the Silverback Society show. Our next guest is Ron Wilkerson, a semi-retired businessman who has been helping to change the lives of young men via the Silverback Society for the past 2 years, and now heads up our new high school program. Ron is also a member of the original Dukes Social and Pleasure Club, which provides mentors at 2 schools as part of the Silverback Society mentoring system. He is here to not only tell us about his experience, but also how his club came on board and how and why you, as an individual or organization, should join the movement. Welcome, Ron Wilkerson.
Thank you, sir.
Nice to have you here.
Good to be here.
All right.
Good to be here.
Tell the audience a bit about yourself and how you got involved.
Well,
with the
I
Silverbacks.
was basically born and raised here in New Orleans. I've been a businessman here for 27 years, and as you mentioned, the original Dukes. I'm proud of being a part of that group for more than 20 years as far as that. The way that we came involved, we have a lot of guys that are in the club that have always had the desire to do things within the community, reach out to young men, do a variety of things. We mentored at Boys Home, reached out to young men in high school and younger along the way. But we found ourselves in a position where we'd hit and miss and do a variety of things. And one day, one of our senior members within the club, Bernard Scott, had ran into the executive director, Lloyd Dennis, of this organization.
Yeah, he has a way of running into people, doesn't he?
He does. And with that, he came back to one of our meetings and talked about what he had heard about the Silverbacks. And we decided to invite Mr. Dennis out and have a conversation with him. We loved the fact that it was a very structured program that was there, and we thought that it would put us on the in the lanes of where we wanted to go and what we were trying to do as far as that's concerned. And we had that conversation and been very pleased to be involved with the Silverbacks ever since.
But structure was most important to you.
It was very important to us because we had a strong desire. We have guys that's in the club that have been in the Big Brother, Big Sister program dating back to 30, 40 years ago as far as that. We've had a variety of young men that we've brought in. There is a boys' home up on Carrollton that we've gone up and done a variety of things, participated in the Christmas program, tried to point them in the right direction, bring in people such as what the Silverback does to give some sort of guidance in certain areas as far as that. But as we got into the crux of what the Silverback had, the Silverbacks provided as a structured 6-week program that as far as the lessons that we go off and actually teach, and then of course there are speakers that come in that provide even enhanced opportunities for them to understand things. But with what we found in the 7 Silverback ways that are taught throughout those 6 lessons as far as that's concerned, I myself found myself in a position where I knew those things, but I didn't learn them in the 8th grade. I found that some of those things, it took me a while to actually get the grasp of it, to get the understanding. And I may have been in my mid-20s, maybe 30 years old before some of those things actually sunk in. But to put them in a compact way and actually teach these young men about it It's at a point to where that structure that the Silverbacks provide is a great, great thing.
Not to put you on the spot, but can you think of one of those things that didn't kick in for you until you were in your 20s?
Well, it was at a point to where being an expert in one area in your life, as far as that's concerned. You can't be a perfectionist in every area as far as that's concerned. But to turn around and have someone to need you to work on a job because you have that expertise and being driven to get that done, it's very important. And me being a businessman, it was at a point to where that was one of the things that I recognized in my business. I needed to be a little bit above what my competition was doing to be able to bring those things to the table.
And this is something that you could pass on
exactly
to the young men that you were mentoring.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, when you think about the Silverback Society, people often ask me, well, do you have to be semi-retired or retired to be a Silverback? What kind of men are you looking for in the Silverback
Well, actually,
Society?
it's really at a point where we're looking for men that want to make a difference. It doesn't matter whether you're in your 50s, 60s, whether you're in your 20s. We have young men that are over at the high school level, that I'll talk about that in a minute, that have that desire to try and help the younger students out. But when you want to make a difference, when you sit back and say, I don't like what's happening with the police encounters that's going on, I don't like what's going on with the justice system, and that it seems like we're not getting a fair shake. We teach the boys, and one of the things that's emphasized, not who they should vote for, but it's a very important thing to get out and vote. It's very important, as I know a lot of people along the way, that when they got a jury notice, they found whatever they could find to get out of that jury
excuse,
notice.
right?
But when we don't have our own people sitting in the jury, you can't then complain about the outcome of that trial. So in instilling in them to, number one, get out and vote, that's gonna make a difference. It's gonna make a change in how justice systems can work and so on down the line. It's really at a point to where they just need to emphasize putting things in life that they need to concentrate on to make their communities better, make their families better, and make it better for them themselves as far as that.
You're on a roll. You mentioned that you wanted to talk in a few minutes about the emphasis being placed at the high schools. Let's talk about it now, since you're hot.
Okay, all right.
Since you're hot, let's strike.
Okay, well, one of the things that when we entered in, the one thing that I love about the Silverbacks is the consistency. The one thing that we do at each of the schools that we're at, we don't go in with just one mentor that's there. There's a group that we go in with, and we have never, I've only been around for a few years, but since the program started, we have never missed a session, never turned around and had a break in that consistency of being there for the boys. One of the guy that I mentioned earlier, he has never, Renard Scott, has never missed one of our sessions over at Fantasy. But for some reason or another, you're gonna have somebody that might be ill, business issue that might come up, so on down the line, but the consistency that's there. So my idea, along with some of the things that was going on within the Silverbacks and talked to Lloyd about, was the point of, let's try and carry that consistency beyond
the 8th grade.
The 8th grade. You know, we give them our phone numbers and tell them, pat them on the back, tell them, you know, if they ever need us, just give us a call, no matter what the situation might be. The high school, not that we're going in and trying to teach the same lessons, but we are enhancing those lessons and telling them various things. We are still bringing in a variety of speakers that can help them out as far as that's concerned. And one of the things, and we're at Warren Eastern right now, but we plan on expanding that to other high schools.
Warren Eastern is the pilot program.
That is the pilot program, and it is going extremely well right now. We have right now about 40 guys that are there.
40? That many?
That many, which is, it was a shock to me. I went by the school the other day to sit down with those guys. But one of the things we had heard, that Lloyd Dennis had heard, was that the assistant principal over at the school, Mr. Gilliard, saw one of the Silverbacks, and not that he was wearing a brand or a cap or had his backpack on. He just knew something was different about him. And when he talked to him, he found out that he was a Silverback, just the way that he was carrying himself and so on down the line. So that was very much encouraging to know that they were taking what they learned in the 8th grade and moved on. But one of the surprises with the high school sessions that were taking place over the summer, there's an orientation that takes place for the 9th graders. And the word got back to us that at breakfast and at lunch, these guys were getting together from various middle schools. And it was a group of over 20 of them, nearly 30 of them that had gotten together. We thought that maybe they found them each other. But this past week we found out that young man that was leading the group over there for us, Kaja Rie, had actually gone out and found the guys, mentioned it, and they started eating lunch, as I said, having breakfast and actually hanging out in break times. And actually, it's very encouraging of what's happening. But those guys, when I met with them the other day, brought up the fact that what they would like to do is actually become high school mentors that could reach back to the middle school level.
So the boys that you're teaching in the middle school level are now moving into high school, mentoring other boys themselves.
That's their desire. We're going to try and get that program. I just learned about it last week. I talked to Mr. Dennis about it, and we're going to try and move forth and see how we can get that to happen for them.
Well, that sounds encouraging.
It is.
What kind of time does one have to invest to be a mentor?
Well, that's the great part about the group approach at each of the schools. The commitment is 1 hour per week. It's normally from Tuesday through Thursday that the sessions are set up during school hours. So we do have men that actually have jobs that will actually work out something with their employer to take their lunch break or an extended lunch break to run over to a school and provide their mentoring as far as that's concerned. And so it's only 1 hour a week. We do commit to them over a 20-week period, but as I mentioned earlier, we do have situations where job-related things or illnesses might prevent one of the guys from showing up, but the group is always there.
Thank you.
All
Your
right.
information has been very informative.
Very good.
All right.
Very good.
And thank you for joining us for another episode of the Silverback Society Show, Raising and Mentoring Young Men. The show airs every Tuesday at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And as always, we leave you with our motto as inspired by the great abolitionist Frederick Douglass. It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. Until next time, I will live my life as though generations depend on me, and I will teach and encourage all of mine to do the same.
I will live my life as though generations depend on me, and I will teach and encourage all of mine to do the same. Silverback, Silverback, move!
And I say this in my 26 years, this is the first program that I've seen an immediate impact, especially with boys.